What really brought everything together for me were the newspaper archives. I was trying to look up certain dates and put in the family name, and it just, oh my God, it blew my mind. I had no idea. Seems that my dad's side of the family were all over Oregon. Came over in covered wagons. It's a wild story, Captain Pleasant. Him and their group coming over a new pass. And they're like lawmen and lawyers and judges. See, I had no clue. They may have literally started the Democratic Party in Oregon. Close to it anyway. 1894. I saw a clipping said Democrat Day. And one of my relatives, this Geo Nolan, two other guys, and the other paper said the unterrified meat. 110 people. That is at Reed Opera House, Salem, Oregon. It's still standing. I had a lawyer there that last time I conversed with my dad, I didn't talk to him 8 years before he died, but he gave me a good reason. He got a false charge put on me. I told him exactly what I thought of him once. I got a false charge hindering 911. The cop was I don't know. I think they probably expected it'd be dropped or something, but that's not my dad. He works at a penitentiary. He wanted me in jail. But it was a false charge. So I went, after spending a night in jail, I asked the cop, hey, ask him how many times he called 911. I mean, he goes, I don't need to do that. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Well, he says you've been drinking. He always says I've been drinking. Can you give me a test? Can you give me a breathalyzer test? He goes, not necessary. There's a trainee cop. When they first got to the house, the one cop went inside and the trainee cop standing there. I go, well, could you give me a test? He didn't say anything. The only thing he said the whole time is what happened. He just stood there. But anyway, yeah, I spent a night in jail. But yeah. Yeah, Reed Opera House. It was wild. It's like I remember going there as a kid too. They had a bunch of shops and stuff in there. But yeah, after the 911 charge, he said I was arrested. I go, hey, I was arrested. He goes, yeah. Well, he goes, I was arrested. I spent the night. They said I hindered 911. He goes, that didn't happen. That's stupid cop. I go, yeah, I know. He goes, well, I'll go down there and talk to somebody. I go, yeah, you should. So, he did. 3 weeks later, I get a menacing charge. So I had to jump through a bunch of hoops and hire a court-appointed lawyer. And his whole thing was wanting me to plead guilty. I talked to my brother like 5 times, and every time the final time I talked to him for a long time, until he started calling my work for some reason. But he used to sound like my dad. You're stupid if you don't plead guilty. Just plead guilty. He's like, I'm not pleading guilty, something I didn't do. So I just quit talking to him. But anyway, yeah, I was innocent. See, even when it was dismissed, I still wanted to go to court. I wanted someone to pay for that. It would have took about 15 minutes for the, if there was a jury, they'd be wanting to string up my dad. I mean, me menacing all the decades he tortured us. Oh my God, what irony that is. But yeah, they're all over going. One of them did the survey of Lane County. They're sheriffs and marshals, and kind of explained to me. I've stopped several crimes in progress. So I kind of explained, so I get that. And then the other thing that was strange is one thing me and my dad got along on. There's probably only one thing, and that was politics. Because apparently it's in our DNA. I mean, they started the Democratic Party, pretty much, or helped. And they're in the progressives, too. I was looking 1914, one of them was in a progressive party. So, and there's a priest, and some of his parishioners were kind of upset that they didn't have good clothes to wear on Sunday. So he decided to wear coveralls while he's giving sermon once. He ended up being murdered somehow. I never got a clear picture of what actually happened, but it was, anyway. But yeah, see, the one thing that was very interesting, my grandfather, he's apparently a warehouseman on the Columbia River, probably in the Dalles. Well, my dad was a warehouseman too in the Dalles. All the barges and ships coming through. And apparently they enacted blue laws, which meant no work on Sundays. And my grandfather, this is like 100 years ago, almost, unloaded a load of bananas on a Sunday, and they decided to prosecute him. And it said he will retain a lawyer, and they gave a quote. He said, "If they want a test case, I'll give them one." So that was that. And I don't know how the case came out, but shortly after that, my father was born, and his dad died. But in the meantime, after my father was born, they apparently went all the way from deep eastern Oregon to Portland. This is 1924, so probably by train or Model T. The roads weren't very good in the gorge back then, so it's most likely train. But the reason they went to Portland was for a eugenics contest for babies. Apparently my dad did really well, got 95. So I got to feed people in the family kind of, I don't know, they kind of thought he was real great or something, I guess. But yeah, and apparently his mother was really abusive. So he had one parent, an abusive mother. Then he went in the Catholic Church and was an altar boy. And I kind of think he got with the worst of what the Catholic Church was offering back then. And the church can carry a grudge. His dad was not very liked. Kind of like me later on in Catholic Church. But there's that. And then then he went to World War II. It's weird, it's almost narcissistic to see him. You never really talk about it much. Apparently he played basketball for a company team. There's some things I do know. He said he bivouacked at Breakfast Garden, which is Goering's place. But that's interesting because that's the first place the Allies went, because that's where all the loot was. And he said he had a flight jacket at one time, and he met Admiral Byrd. He had a picture of him with Admiral Byrd. I'm not sure what's that. But he really didn't talk about it much, which is really strange. I remember he had some pictures of Germany, and they were really good pictures. I mean, they looked like professional, but you know, I think someone actually took those, and I thought, no way Dad took these. They're too good. They look too good for him to be taking these. But yeah. Then somehow we ended up at the Dalles with my mom. We had 3 kids. And the interesting thing I learned, that Mom always used to tell this story, that, well, I learned that 3 years before I was born, 3 years after my brother, my father had driven to Salem to be elected to the Council of Knights of Columbus. And within that group, his function was warden, which is appropriate because this was 1960. 10 years later, we'd moved to the area north of Salem, and he'd start work at Oregon State Penitentiary. But yeah, I had no idea about that either. And that kind of blew me in mind. Oh, the other thing is I found out where my dad was born. The first house ever built in Oregon was in Hot Springs. It's where the Native Americans' healing place. That's where the first house was. And it's also, if you look at top 10 most haunted places in Oregon, that's number 9. Used to be a show on Sci-Fi that most haunted places in the world, and that made the list, I guess, that Hot Springs. And it's got a weird history. It used to be a fantastic healing place for rich folk at one time. But yeah, he was born there. It's appropriate. But yeah, I was just thinking, place that we lived in, place in the Dalles. Well, one of the interesting things, my mom would always tell this story. She'd say, I'm an accident. It was like 5 years and some months after my brother was born. She kept getting nauseous in the morning. She couldn't understand why. And she asked, well, one of her friends said, well, maybe you're pregnant. Aunt Edna, she was a nurse. She said, really, wasn't blood relative, but she was family. Which families anyway. And she said, maybe you're pregnant. But my mom didn't think she could get pregnant anymore, so, well, and the thing was, she never got morning sick for any of her other 4 kids. She went to the doctor, and yep, 5.5 months. She's barely even showing. So, it was probably lucky I was that far along, because my dad was Catholic, but he would have tried to have her aborted if it's any less. Pretty sure. He didn't want me. Plain and simple. He had his one kid, that's all he wanted. And that's another thing. Apparently with the Nolan clan, it's all about the 4th son. It's right on the crest, the family crest. It's a figurehead of the legendary Marriott. It's a wingless bird, symbol of the fourth sun. Courage, loyalty, honor. And there's some dispute whether I'm fourth or fifth son. I don't know. Courage, loyalty, honor. That doesn't sound like my brother. But anyway, moving on. But yeah, the places I live, well, the Dows sucked. I mean, I got pushed through the window there and almost got my toes cut off. My sister was trying to enact these play scenarios where I was dead to scare my mom. Dad picks a fight with my brother. Day gets back from Vietnam, so I was glad to leave that place. And then we moved to Salem for apartments for a short time. I met a guy named Brett. Ended up working with him at a company that transported disabled and low-income people to doctor's appointments. Also, a lot of foster kids. So one of the owners was a foster parent, so we kind of cornered the market on foster kids. But yeah, we were friends as kids. I remember I was training with him one day. We went down that street. He goes, "I used to live over there." It's like, oh my, that's him. It is him. See, I told him when I was a kid. He was upset when I was moving out. We moved to Kaiser. I said, well, maybe we'll meet again. And it's like it's like I felt a reflection of us like 30 years later back behind me. I remember I was facing north. But yeah, I was glad to come to Kaiser. But the place we decided to get parents decided to get a house, it was a strawberry field. Streets didn't have names yet. There's a big pasture at the end of it was a dead-end street, big pasture at the end, a couple of cows and a mean bull. Luckily, there's an electric fence because that was mean. But when they named the street, they named it Noon, and the street leading up to it was Leo. And once I started learning stuff, I started taking things literally. I looked up noon in a biblical term. That means devil during the day. That's why in the westerns they're always having the showdown at noon. High noon. So I'm assuming that's my dad. But there's that place. Then I had to leave home a month after graduation, month or so after graduation, a couple of weeks before my 18th birthday. I had my bed pushed up against the wall, but underneath the window, and I was on my knees smoking weed out the window at 3 a.m. My dad throws open the door, flips on the light, sees what I'm doing, and I thought, well, maybe it'll be like on the Saturday, the TV movies they do when adults and kids are talking about marijuana. Nope. He saw what I was doing and sprang like a cat onto the bed and gave me a right hand and a left hand to the head. And the left hand kind of flipped me. Pipe flipped up and I kind of hit the ground and rolled to the wall and then sprang back, and I was really clear-headed. I wasn't rattled at all. He hit me in the back of the head, so I guess it didn't shake my brain too much. But I just popped up, and I remember just when I came still, I was looking at him. I thought, you move 1 inch, I'm gonna nail you right in the nuts. It's either I'm gonna kick you or I'm gonna punch you, one way or another. If you come down here, you're gonna be hurting. So I was just waiting, and he's just kind of standing there. And I kind of looked at some of the ash you got in the bed. My dad saw my eyes, and he looked at the ash, and he goes, "Look what you did!" I said, "Okay, it's time to leave." So Mom was frantic. It was horrible. Dad, "Well, you don't have to leave." I just got some clothes, and so I needed a place to live, needed a vehicle, and a job. The place to live was a guy named Steve, who I'd end up hanging around him the rest of his life. Then worked for his dad at a hellhole place for 20 seasons, 20 years practically. Like a 20-year sentence. But yeah, that was a very cool place, because all his work buddies hung out. And they were all into meth. Meth was really big then. And they'd come out there, this Stu and Jim, Rick. They were trying to make meth one time. They bought all these inhaler things, and they're trying to use ether. I guess it never worked. When they started doing that, I go, "Well, I'm out of here. I'm not gonna stay around for this." See, the only thing I did was beer and weed. That's it. That's enough. But the drug of choice in my generation was methamphetamines. Crack. Those guys were no exception. They both worked on the farm and lived out there. Jim did. There's a horrific, tragic history of where the people live out there, when I found out why later. But yeah, I lived with Steve there, and ended up moving out, lived in a house by Market and Park. People, his little cottage back of the house, people in front said, "The owner's going to tell you it's going to flood this winter," and the owner's going to tell you that never happened before, and they're so sorry, and they're going to talk to people about it. But just be used to it. And that's exactly what happened. "Oh, that's never happened before." Yeah. That's not what the neighbors, that's not what the people in front said. Anyway, after that, I went to a big house, 6 bedrooms. Rented out all the bedrooms. And had a stagnant pool. Been sitting for years. It was dark green. I remember one of the guys that lived there, one of his girlfriend's kids threw the pool skimmer in. The guy that owned the place wanted his pool skimmer back. I mean, what was he going to do with it? I mean, it's green. I mean, I looked in it, and there's stuff growing in there. I couldn't identify what kind of plant life it was. And so, nope.